I am the future, I am black, and I am powerful.
Excellent, thank you. Just like that, we need a few more. Oh, thank you.
Okay, I am loud, I'm assertive, and I'm intellectually eating.
Okay, great. Oh, perfect. Thanks for volunteering.
I'm confident, I'm calm, and I am strong.
Excellent. A few more, a few more. I'll come around. Oh, as I come around to the mic, I'll hold it for you all.
I'm guilty,
Outgoing that way. Couple more, couple more.
I am funny, kind, helpful, determined.
All right, good. A few more volunteers. Oh, thank you so kindly for volunteering.
I'm white, Jewish, sweaty, and an Evanston.
All right, good. Oh, thank you. To you too.
I'm driven, I'm brave, and I'm curious.
Okay, good, good, good. Oh, I see some volunteers over here. I like that.
I'm black, powerful, and intelligent.
I'm deceptive, resilient, and patient. Money hungry, in love with raising pain, and I am improving, loud, and energetic. I'm driven, confident, and
Good. All right, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone? Miss Kim, how about yourself?
tall, fun, and smart.
Okay. Okay. We'll go with the tall and fun. All right. Anyone else? So, with that exercise, a couple of things. Did anyone notice anything stand out to you all at all? So, you notice people had a number of different types of descriptions, right? And again, how you describe yourself is how you describe yourself, and that's totally fine. What you'll find is a couple of things as well. Typically, and this was the case for a few of you all, typically people who have an identity in which you are targeted by oppression. So if you're black, or Jewish, those are identities in which people are targeted by oppression. We oftentimes closely align with those identities. That's very common. If you're, I heard one, maybe two people mention who are white, mention white. Usually that's not the case. Why do you all think that is? Why do you think, and I've done this exercise probably 100 times in a variety of different audiences. Why do you think people who are white oftentimes will not say white? Yes. Very good. It's not something that they have to think about. So then typically a white person who will say that reflects a level of awareness that many white people don't have. So what I want to point out is the different identities that we hold, those ones which other people notice, those identities that draw a lot of attention to other people, those identities in which we are targeted, we tend to closely identify with. So Ms. Kim says she's tall. I would imagine, I don't think you just grew last week. I would imagine growing up as a kid you were taller. Well, she was, I remember. I'm just trying to be nice. But she was tall, and for a young girl to be tall versus a young boy to be tall, that's a lot of times a different perception, a different experience, I would imagine. Can you just speak anything to how that experience was being tall as a young girl?
Well, it can be awkward. It can be awkward, and it's the first thing people see. And I think that's when, you say I'm black, because of course you walk in the room, you're black or you're tall. It's what people see, and sometimes it's what you have to deal with. So I definitely can identify with what you're saying, how we see ourselves. And tall was really the first thing I put.
See, so again, those identities that people notice about us, what's visible. So one of the reasons why race and sex or gender, race and sex in our society are so prevalent in terms of identities, because those are identities that many people can notice about us. Not always, but often. So myself, I usually say I'm black, I'm a male, but a lot of times males won't mention that we're male as often as a female or someone else will mention that they're female or something else. Because as a male, I'm privileged. As a black person, I'm disadvantaged in our society a lot. Growing up in Evanston, I could have told you all about the racism that I experienced. I knew all about that, but I never thought about the way I was privileged as a young boy. I was totally oblivious to that. So those identities in which we carry a privilege, a lot of times we're totally unaware of. So some of the core identities that we're referring to, can I walk around with this or I have to stay here? Does it keep cutting off? Is that what it was back there? Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. So some of the core identities, typically, race, class, gender, sexual orientation, age, ability, and religion. I mean, there's many, many more. But those are some of the core ones that people tend to identify with, right? Or, as Ms. Kim says, she's tall. Or for me, if I took my turban off and let my hair down, my hair comes down to my knees. So for a man to have long hair, that's a bit unusual. So that draws a lot of attention to people. So that becomes a close part of my identity, right? Those things that other people notice, or identities in which we are targeted by. Anyone have any thoughts on that? Or an experience you want to share from that? Or any questions about that? And as you all see, I will come and volunteer you. So, anyone? Yes.
I remember I was in a store that reminded me of where there's a white rectangle and then a lot of other identities like class and gender and sexuality. And then it gets progressively darker until it becomes black and the text is in black as well, so the other identities get less and less visible. I think it's interesting because people pay attention to that less and you're sort of able to less identify as that. That's what people don't see it as much. I think it's kind of connected.
Yeah, excellent point. Excellent point. Very well said. Excellent. Anyone else? Let's get one more. Is your hand up? But just because you all look away doesn't mean I won't call on you. Okay, thank you.
I just say,
Typically identities in which we're privileged. And as well, we carry identities in which we may not be privileged. If you're growing up in Evanston, you all, you're privileged. You are privileged. For me, and for many of us, it takes leaving Evanston to realize that privilege, because this is all we know. I mean, this is a phenomenal place. We got one of the top high schools in the country. And we got the lakefront, one of the top universities in the world. And it's a green city, and so on and so forth. This is an incredible place, but we take it to be normal. Even to have this program is very unusual in this country. For young people like you all, this is a privilege. These are privileges that we may not consider. Myself, I grew up, I had both parents at home. I never saw that to be a privilege. I just saw that to be normal. But that's a privilege. I didn't earn that. I didn't ask for that. I was born into that. You know, so you want to consider identities in which you're just given certain privileges. So when we talk about that, we're talking about the notion of dominance and subordination, or to be dominant and subordinate. And to be dominant means there's identities where you just have certain privileges, you might have certain power, certain authority given to you that you did not necessarily earn, simply because of that identity that you hold. So myself as a young boy, I can go down to the beach and it's hot, I can take my shirt off and go swimming. Nobody's gonna look twice. Well, I mean, I got a little, you know. Other than that, nobody's gonna look twice. But let a girl do the same thing. See, most boys, we don't even have to think about that. We don't even have to consider that. But so there are differences. So when you are of a dominant group, typically those groups set the rules that others have to follow. And that's where like subordination and privilege and power and oppression and a lot of those elements come into play. So we all carry different identities. Some identities are visible, some are invisible. You cannot necessarily see someone's religion. You cannot necessarily see someone's sexual orientation. You can't necessarily see someone's age. But sometimes you can, but not necessarily always, or even race. You might think someone's of one race. They might identify by an entirely different race. So some we can see, some we can't. Some identities might be fixed, some might be temporary. So you all are young. Believe it or not, Miss Kim was young at one point. Just trust me on that. Just trust me. She was young at one point. So being older, there's certain privileges we have. But being younger, there might be certain privileges that you all might have, that might change over time. Can anyone tell me what's the one identity group that we all will experience most of our lifetime? It's a disadvantaged identity. It's one that is tied with its disadvantages. Anyone think yes? It's one that if you live long enough, you will likely share or experience this identity in which you are targeted, you are disadvantaged. Any guess? You want to call it out? Age or ability. You hit it right on the head. Ability. To be quote unquote disabled or differently able. I like to say differently able. That's something that if you live long enough, you will likely experience that. And as people grow old, your body breaks down, there's certain things you can't do that you used to be able to do. Your hearing might go, you start wearing glasses. Why do we not consider wearing glasses a disability? I mean, is it not? I'm unable to read without my glasses. But that's not technically defined as a disability. So it's the question, who has the power to define that? And why is wearing glasses considered to be a disability? Not a disability, but if I wear a hearing aid, I'm considered to be disabled. But I would like to encourage you all to consider the notion of not being disabled, being differently able. Because those people still have abilities. They're just different. And they have identities. Sometimes they just can't be seen. To be temporarily disabled is also a concept. Right now, if you can run and jump, like when you're riding your bike, you have to even think about it. The sidewalk has a curve, or if it's a ramp. Wheelchair, you have to consider that every time. If you're not, you might not have to think about that. Or if you're differently abled. Has anyone here ever been on crutches? 1, 2, 3, a few, okay. So when you were on crutches, I'm sure you were noticing some things that you may not have noticed before. And I think we have one, I don't want to say volunteer, but you didn't come in on crutches, but you have a leg brace. But there's certain experiences we'll have that will give us a different perspective, right? So if you are on crutches in the wintertime and there's ice outside, you might have to think about that in an entirely different way than what you would have to think about it right now. I'm pretty much physically able-bodied, but I've been pretty much, get the mic from her. But I've broken my leg, I've broken both my wrists, I've broken my nose, I've broken my shoulder blade, I've broken 6 fingers, I've had a fractured foot, and a few other ailments. So I know what it's like to be temporarily unable to do something. And it was those experiences that gave me a lot of lessons and a lot of humility. But that all informed who I am today as a person. So my question to you all is your identity, but how does that inform your activism? Right, so you all talked about what it means to be an activist. And even if you don't consider yourself to be an activist, but what it is you're acting on that you believe in, how does your identity impact that? I need you all to really hear this question because I'm going to ask you all to discuss this in a moment. How does your identity inform your activism? Based on your race, class, gender, sexual orientation, age, ability, etc. Based on being from Evanston, or if you grew up somewhere else and came to Evanston, it gave you a different perspective. But how does your identity inform your activism? Based on your identity, you will have certain experiences, and those certain experiences will give you certain insights that inform how you carry yourself in the world. So I'm going to ask right now if we can take a moment, if we can take, so you all in the back can actually be a group, but again, Miss Kim, we were saying not to move your chairs, but just turn your body. So we can get groups of say 4, that would be preferred. It's a challenge of not moving. So if you all want to identify a group around you, say a 4, let's shoot with 4. We'll have one group of 5. So if you want to identify 4 people around you, or